Let's talk about application. Folks who know me well hear me talk about all the time, I don't care about activity, I care about outcome. If you're talking about your division, talking about your program, I don't care how many people went to conference. What difference did it make in the classroom? Period. Outcome is what is really essential to get to. In assessment, you happen to say something you might not like. I've always had a bone to pick with the focus of the word on assessment. Assessment is a means. If you're not doing anything with it, who cares other than HSC? But even they have realized back in 2018, changing their own criterion to focus on, we assume you're assessing. What is it? Are you getting outcomes? Have you defined the outcomes? Are you getting the outcome? And then criterion 3G, I'll make that one of those. Actually gets into what process improvements have you made as a result of assessment data. That's what this is all about, and that's why I get so passionate about it, is application, not just activity.
I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah, it's a misnomer. I think it doesn't help people who are on the fringes understanding what really matters. If this is something you even want to consider as a possibility of following, a few things to include, or feel free to chime in if you think I'm missing something. Develop a game plan. Now that's going to have a lot of heads to this dragon. The assessment committee. Get learning outcomes defined. Work with faculty. Get them understanding what assessment is and what it's not. Do a lot of great things. Our SAC coordinators do a lot of work to try to get this game plan moving. CTL, work with your CTL. Think about how we can do things even better so that Canvas will work for this kind of tool. The main thing I've been preaching on is coding, changing some of the namings that go in for the learning outcomes, the short names of the learning outcomes. Institutional research. Take a look at the possibility in this prep flow. Think about it. Think about what might I need to edit. I've given you the Cliff Notes. I've given you the Spark Notes. Jackie's also got a lot of experience playing with this, figuring out what works and doesn't work. But get that implementation going on. HLC liaisons. Understand where there are holes in your documentation for HLC for your next site visit. Talk to them. Help identify, wow, we could really use more data talking about the phenomenal work happening in accounting. Start using some of this data in accounting, which does a great job, towards creating that HLC documentation. IT, talk about things like permissions to be able to get to the various data, being able to possibly get permissions into Canvas itself, etc. And finally, administration. If they don't support it, it's now in terms of moving forward, the assessment committee and faculty, it's self-defined, build into the rubrics and grade the stuff. One thing I don't know that I made super clear, when I keep on talking about making it efficient, making that data set as small and as quick as possible, part of the trick that I did was I took a look at the data. And if in your data that you create through this flow, there is no value, meaning no 1 or no 0 in the field for mastery, I excluded. One, that cut out of a whole lot of stuff that took a lot of time to process. 2, I'm working on a percentage of mastery. That's what I work with. 3, it really made it fast. But if there is no data recorded, somebody hasn't done any grading on that learning outcome, it's not going to show up in the dashboard. But you have a good bonus to be able to create one that has all learning outcomes, but it doesn't have it right And the last thing for the assessment committee is really to not just have the data, but look at it, see what story is being told. For non-data people, the trick that I found that works really well is try to not just show charts and graphs, but explain what it says to you, what it might mean. There's a trend going on. Oh yeah, voting. Which explains some things. Oh, we had a big peak, high improvement in mastery. Changed how we taught this segment, reinforced this. Being able to explain why there are shifts is really the power of the assessment committee and faculty, individually and within their departments. CTL, moving forward with this, get classes loaded. Learning outcomes loaded into Canvas using some recommended procedures. And if not mine, come up with your own. But getting that data work for you inside Canvas. IR folks, let me hear a whoop. Not expect a single whoop. That was going to be an awkward moment. Take a look. Recode the existing flow file to gather your college's data and your college's terms that you want to include. And I gave you the Cliff Notes and the Spark Notes about where to look. And in case you have questions, you know where I live. And finally, edit the coding to only gather pertinent terms to keep it short, sweet, and fast. Make sure you change your logo. So I don't think your college would like to have my logo. People are weird that way. Get all corny and all shucks, once again, it does take, it takes a lot of people involved. Different levels of engagement, get it happening, but it is necessary. It's kind of like the old difference in assessment. It's kind of like the difference between a chicken and a pig when it comes to breakfast. Have you heard this? When it comes to breakfast, pigs all pigs.
Gotcha.
You could be involved, but if you're not committed, particularly in your key players, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. You're going to have insufficient participation in assessment. You're not going to have a lot of solid data to support your accreditation. So it takes a lot of effort, but it's doable. And for you, I guarantee you it's not going to take 7 years. That I can guarantee. But I want to be pragmatic and real. We're not perfect here. We're doing a lot of things together. We're doing a lot of things. That aspirational could be better is always important to have. We have a lot of faculty who don't understand the difference between grades and learning outcomes. They think assessment is simply I grade an assignment. That's good enough. But you don't know what concepts they're not getting. And you can't really improve grades with the exception of grading easier. If you understand the outcomes, you know what to address. Teach that concept to your faculty and your administration. Because learning outcomes and student success is not just grades. Recognize not all of our classes are using Canvas as a learning management system. Most of them are, not all. We still lag from where I would hope we would be at this point about substantial participation. And that gets back to that philosophical conversation I challenged y'all to have as a college. Taking a look at what are the beliefs and the experiences about student learning outcomes in general. Because getting to that concept, trying to understand why people do not assess is essential to mitigate those concerns about why they're not doing it, to drive and change behavior. You're not going to get to the facts until you get the emotion out of the way. So listen to that emotion and embrace it. That's coming from an IR guy. We don't do emotion. Now, for CTL folks, I agree, setting up Canvas does take time. And realistically, not time everyone has available or is willing to give. It's a choice. I'm really incredibly blessed with some very giving folks who have made this doable. May not be as fortunate, It might be even more so. And then finally, getting to the issue of not everyone is comfortable with data. There are folks who don't understand data. There are people who fear data. They fear how it can be used. This is a cultural change work we got to deal with inside the college, getting people understanding that data is just data. And maybe my mastery learning of outcomes goes down this semester. It doesn't mean I've done a bad job. We had a lot of things shift for several years in education. It's called COVID. COVID was the cause. Even though maybe some of our numbers dropped, didn't mean we were doing a worse job. Situation. You got to ask yourself not what the data says, but take a look at what meanings might be behind it. What are the causes that drove it? That's where you get into the wisdom of really understanding and embracing data. So maybe just as a group chat, including online folks, just considering with learning outcomes and application, time and resource and accreditation and activities and outcomes, what are the problems and solutions to be able to make a difference so that we are getting assessment? Look forward to the essence of what we do. Finding a zealot really helps. Becky and I were nuts about this stuff. We really loved diving into it. That helped us stray and make some progress. But if everyone's indifferent, that's okay, be a realist. That's an okay answer. But if you want to mobilize, please think amongst yourselves now, forever hold your peace. But just think about how to move forward. I'm going to give you a challenge. With what you have, what you might have in the future, candidly ask yourself a few basic questions that the HLC will definitely ask. What documentation do you have that you have learning outcomes in place? Because if you don't have documentation, it doesn't exist. What documentation do you have learning outcome results? Because if you don't have documentation, it doesn't. Thank you. I was going to have to say it myself. And finally, what documentation of using assessment results do you have that you can show people? For us, CATS is a great way of doing it. Comprehensive assessment tracking systems. Thank you. It is always so good to have a show in the audience. Thank you so much. It is a great way to say, here's the data, here's how we used it, here's what we learned, here are the next steps. If you have that in hand, you got a chance. If you don't have that in hand, you got a site visit. It's an opportunity to meet some really smart people, but you don't want to take them.
Jim, this is probably a good time to interrupt you. So we have our monthly assessment meeting tomorrow morning at 9. And we have been featuring every meeting a CAS submission, and tomorrow yours is up, the one that you wrote. So I'm not gonna give you a lot of notice on that, but anyway, at our assessment coordinators meeting, our SAC committee meeting, we highlighted CAS and the whys. We're trying to get all representative areas, so now's the time to break it to you. I don't know.
I noticed that.
Okay, good. Oh, I thought I could just drop it on you, but maybe sorry.
On this note, for anyone who doesn't know, the district has pulled together all the HLC peer reviewers and is starting sort of a formal process of providing support to the colleges. And like one thing they're planning to do is like 2 years out from the 10-year review, asking the peer reviewers to maybe go in and give some suggestions on like, you know, do you have evidence for this? Do you have evidence for that? In time for the colleges to then hopefully gain evidence. So it should be, it sounds cool. I'm an agency peer reviewer, so I'm part of this group, but I like that because I think it's reassuring knowing that safe within Maricopa, someone might come in and be like, let me, make some suggestions. Our next review is in October, so.
Unofficially, my observation of site visits I've seen in the past. I haven't been overwhelmed with the rigor of feedback and challenge some of the reviewers will give. In industry, the expectation standard would be extraordinarily high. If you're showing good faith and effort, that's a huge step forward in higher education. Don't assume the reviewers means. Ones I've seen that did pretty mild, and they were so thrilled with what we were doing that even though we didn't have a huge body of work at the time, it was good enough to get through criteria for flying colors. But the days of you tried hard and participation badges may or may not be good enough in the future. So use this, don't use this, use something. Use something. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I printed it out, I looked at it last night.
It was better for you on the spot, so.
But I did. Does this stuff resonate? If it doesn't, that's cool. If it does, hopefully this is not the end all. This is the beginning of conversation. The beginning of conversation, not just by our folks, not just CPO, but all the players involved. Because if you don't have all the stakeholders involved, you're not going to come up with good resolution. Because you're going to wind up with a turkey missing its turkey legs at Thanksgiving dinner, and that's a bad setup. Where do we go from here? I'm not sure yet. This is something that's kind of fluid. This was kind of I want to get something on paper and start the conversation. So you see some merit, maybe we can do some follow-ups, some conversations. You just want to talk one-on-one, we're at it. Let's keep the conversation going. And I encourage our SAC committee to talk about this a little bit tomorrow as well. We can talk about what we've shared, where we're coming from. Maybe that'll help, all of us have a little more appreciation for the different roles we're playing, and possibly in a positive way, even more accountability amongst each other to really strive to be better and stronger and faster. Online or in the room, any reflections on where we've been today? Other than they did not have street tacos at the, yeah, I was bummed.
Yeah, online, we wish you would have sent street tacos out to the online participants. That would have been nice. Mark Ferrar is chiming in, and I typed in with regard to the newest questions. I think I know our Australia Mountains accreditation is coming up in a few years. And even though it's a few years away, there's a lot of prerequisite steps and things that come up leading to that. And I know that these being able to tie in these learning outcomes are critical. Mark chimed in with, since the majority of our institutions can be dinged for the assessment of portion of HLC accreditation review, why do we not have a district effort for a shared solution? I could see a great resource in which all institutions have a say in course and program outcomes by feeded by CCTA tables.
I'm going to politely smile and not say a word because there's really nothing I can say. I can't speak on behalf of the district why we don't.
I'm happy to do that. So in my role as Maricopa Assessment Committee Chair, these conversations come up that have come up repeatedly. The challenge that we face really is well, multi. different colleges have very different systems for doing these things. You know, most of us are on Canvas, not all of us. Some of us have an assessment management system, others of us don't. There's recognition that our individual accreditation can make some things, you know, we have, you know, the desire for targeted solutions. Another thing that has come up has been that changes happen more easily, maybe locally, than in the unwieldiness of the whole district. So that's kind of on the other side. Other members of this group would like to see more shared solutions, like to see the ICs doing more of this work, although there's concerns about the burden then on the ICs. So this is a common conversation. It's been going on for years. We don't have a good solution to it. We are not in agreement about it at the assessment leaders level. There has been discussion over times about having assessment leadership in the district over many years. And there are pros and cons of that as well. So my answer is we have no answer, but we've talked about it. But on that note, you are always welcome, if you are a faculty member, to talk to your IC, because ICs could choose to do this individually without there being a district mandate. But it's all very complicated.
And not just faculty, student affairs, same thing. So many sentences possible. I really didn't spend a lot of time talking about that as another wrinkle, but it is very doable within the second. Great question. Try to sidestep that. Other
We
questions?
have, Jim, we got one more online from Felicia PV. We just completed a comment question. We just completed our comprehensive site and coming off a strong assessment documentation. Because I know PV just ran through the rigmarole on this, right? Trying to keep momentum in terms of a district solution. We all have different processes, making it hard to find a solution that fits all. So it is tough to find a one size fits all, and I know there's been movements as far as trying to conglomerate programs and things like that, but it kind of seems like some of this ties in with that. And Mark's typing in right now. It's only getting harder as we all do it slightly differently.
Very true. Well, guys, a lot to digest, a lot to chew on, and a lot to try to forget. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know that we've had a long day and a lot of very detailed content. I will hang out for a while if anybody just wants to shoot the ball about this or whatever. But this is the end of the formal component I wanted to share today, and at least created as a possibility where practical realities is a straight end. We don't need to have all the answers. We have more questions. Now I'll look at this. But it's a starting point. It's a starting point of dialogue that I haven't really heard before. So I want to thank you for your consideration, your participation, both here and online. And I look forward to working with and knowing more of you all. Good luck, folks. Do great things.